functions in certain matchups when you have that card in there.
Yeah, it's and I don't think it's going to be answered for a while. Maybe the mini set, maybe the next expansion will just dramatically mix things up. Maybe Spell Mage won't be a thing. Who knows? But what I do know is this game has just started here. Bozzzton on top on that Rogue, Felkeine on the bottom on the Mage, and so far Bozzzton has got hold of a pretty decent opening. Decent opening. I do want to ask you though, just straight off the bat, how do you feel about the Neophyte keep in this matchup? Is that just good enough to just kind of plan to play out on curve?
Yeah, I like it because he already has the Octobot, right? I think we could have a more in-depth discussion about whether you want to mulligan more greedily for the Octobot, because I do think that has more impact on the game than a Neophyte overall. But once you have the Octobot, you start to think, okay, what cards do I want to go alongside this? And outside of Jandis, which is a one-off legendary, Kazakus, which is a one-off legendary, and I guess Field Contact, there's really not that many cards that are markedly better than anything else that you can draw, so I think holding on to Cult Neophyte is pretty reasonable.
And now all I'm thinking, if only it was a Foxy, because this is a turn I just love. Even if my opponent's done nothing, just being able to play like Foxy into Van Cleef on turn 2. Oh.
It's just so many stats, right?
Yeah.
This is, it's a very different matchup with Cult Neophyte, where you can just play it early like this. It's not like you want to block a key turn like Skull of Gul'dan later on. It's just generally the best response to Incanter's Flow on curve, to the point where the Mage player will often coin out Incanter's Flow, even in situations where that would seem weird, just to play around Cult Neophyte coming down on curve on the following turn, right? Like coming down here.
Does make sense here, yeah. And he's going to get that reduction, and that just means everything's just going to happen that little bit quicker. I do wonder if he even wants to throw this one thief down. Because it's 0 mana, it's always an interesting choice, right? Because he's adding more health on the board, but he's also just adding a minion to remove, right? And maybe Combustion has an impact, maybe not. But the fact it's 0 means that he can just play it next turn and have the same kind of choices, because it's not like he's got any mana for the spell that he's going to gain, right?
Agreed. It's an interesting choice, yeah. But I think with the curve he has next turn, he does still just have Kazakus into Van Cleef on the following turn at a minimum anyway. There's obviously upside to holding it that does range fairly far. Outside of Field Contact, obviously, there's other reasons just to hold on to a 0 mana potential combo activator in your hand. So, tough decision.
Okay, well, seeing the Combustion, I imagine Bozzzton wouldn't have been overly happy to go Van Cleef after this Kazakus, if that's where he wants to go. But now that he has the second one thief, he can just divert just a little bit.
Yeah, Combustion not exactly premium. I would say generally with Van Cleef, you would love to pick up a burn spell, even if it's like Apexis Blast, which is a much worse spell for you than it is for them. Because, going back to that Top Trumps allegory, right? Like your burn rating is much lower than theirs is overall. So adding an extra burn spell to your hand can really help you close out the game later on. So picking up a Fireball, picking up a Apexis Blast, even if it's from one thief and not from the Vanessa Van Cleef, can actually make a huge difference in the way that the matchup pans out overall.
Yeah, I think that or card draw, right? Does obviously depend on what's in the Rogue's hand, but card draw is never going to be a bad thing since most of the deck is built around it.
Agreed.
Gonna pick the 5-drop Golem, not too much of a surprise. I didn't quite catch what he picked though, so we'll have to investigate.
Grand Finale. Okay, some way away from that being impactful, but it's another board refill.
And just note, Golems are not elementals, just so everyone's aware.
Okay. Yeah, good to know.
I think some people assume they are, right? Because they kind of look like it.
I can see why you'd think that, yeah, sure. I'll get on board with that.
Oh, okay. Stealth draw 2. Evolving going to be pretty clutch, though. Means that Bozzzton's going to have this Golem or whatever it ends up being most likely cleaned up. Okay. Or not.
Yeah, and just insta-rips the Lunacy. Yeah, I think Felkeine was just like, okay, if there's nothing like massively problematic that comes off this Devolving Missiles, I'm just going to rip this this deck of Lunacy, because his hand just isn't going anywhere, right? This whole game has just not gone anywhere for Felkeine so far. He's just been behind. He's been playing survival. He's just had to throw removal spells at minions. No flow, no real future for the way that this game is panning out right now. So yeah, fully on board with just ripping the deck of Lunacy.
And it's not like he can make a weird sort of ring toss into rigged fair game plan, because Rogue will just hit you in the face. So it's not as if that even looks like it could go anywhere either. So yeah, I'm with you on this one. Now Bozzzton with a Shadow Step and this field contact means he can keep this going, and also just lock out a potentially powerful response from Felkeine, especially now that he's seen that deck of Lunacy be played.
I think you just finesse a Van Cleef here, right? Yeah. I know you're going to get a completely garbage card with Deck of Lunacy for yourself, but it's just a 2/3 that draws a card on the board right now, and threatening damage backed up by this Alexstrasza. Still have both Wicked Stabs in your deck.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take. All right.
No.
I was gonna say I'll take one bad card in my hand to draw a card from my deck. Right, that just makes sense.
Agreed. Chooses to hold on to the Shadow Step here. Could have locked out further with Cult Neophyte and drawn one extra card with the additional Shadow Step. Not a given. Obviously, you can't really formulate a game plan. It's a lot easier when you know what you're dealing with, to be like, okay, I have 2 Neophytes in play right now. What does the third one do? Well, you have no idea, essentially, right? Because of the Deck of Lunacy effect being in play. But I still think with the threat of, like, top deck card draw into a playable spell after that, I think, you know, locking out as much mana as possible could be powerful here.
But it's kind of just done enough anyway. Luckily, I guess, for Bozzzton. Felkeine, I think, first needs to make a decision as to where he wants to put this 3/1, because I do think this has to be traded this turn. I guess it would need to go into the field contact. Oh, it's got a fireball as well. This one hurts, but I think it needed to be done.
Yeah, you see the big shake of the head now for Felkeine, and he is just assuming prayer position, because that's about all you can do in this spot. You just need to hope that the next card in your deck is a Nagrand Slam or Skull of Gul'dan into powerful things off the card draw. You just need to start doing strong things immediately, and there are still a lot of whiffs, potentially, in his deck with the way it's made up with the Deck of Lunacy.
And you mentioned the fireball, right? He could actually play field contact and Shadow Step Van Cleef to get a fireball.
True.
Which doesn't seem too bad to me.
I like that a lot, actually. I guess the slight downside is that you have to really trust your deck to allow that turn to keep going, because the rest of your turn doesn't really cycle off field contact. But I do like the proposition of, you know, just getting an extra fireball in hand this turn. It seems very powerful.
And I think Felkeine's just quite visibly shown Bozzzton that he's not really got a lot going on over there, right? So maybe that's the window has been opened. But Bozzzton did Secret Passage into a very good set of cards, right? So I guess, you know, who cares about a fireball if you're just going to make these plays?
Felkeine winced visibly as he saw Mankrik come down into Foxy Swindle, because obviously then the Swindle can pull out the Mankrik spell. Just immediately get a 3/7 attacking face on board, but Felkeine still needs help. He still needs help from his deck to get out of this one, and Blessing of Kings is a giant whiff. Potion of Illusion, Blessing of Kings, 2 4-mana cards that rely on having board presence before he's been able to get any board generation out of his deck. This is just one of those things that can happen.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was more trying to cut Felkeine off. He was going for the One Thief, but I was actually looking at what, like, Firebrand Potion play Firebrand does. Yeah. Because those are the kind of plays I think he has to go for at this point.
He can still fit it all in, though, right? He can go One Thief, Firebrand, Potion, then he still has coin to be able to do everything else that he needs with the Shooting Star as well. I think this is now a clear. He's going to do 4 damage here. And then with the second Firebrand and the Shooting Star, he's going to do 7. And there is currently 5s. There's slightly too much still left remaining on the board. Okay.
Should he have coined first?
Yes,
I think that's what Felkeine's kind of waving his hand about, right? If you coin first, you can guarantee the clean damage with the
shooting star.
Yeah, shooting star, sorry.
Yeah, so you coin first, then play the firebrand, then play the shooting star is what you're saying, right? Yeah, I think I agree with that. That makes sense.
And that was clutch as well, because Bozzzton was at the point where if he got to swing face with those minions, just Alexstrasza, Shadow Step Alexstrasza over 2 turns would have just killed him, right?
Yes. He's not anywhere out of trouble yet. Like, exactly, I was just about to say, he has to resume the same prayer position that he's been in for the last couple of turns, because he's just right back in the same spot where his hand is currently really not doing anything. Bozzzton is miles away from being burned down because of that armor smith that came from the devolving missiles several turns ago. And he's got plenty of gas left to go, generating his own board presence. Still has the Mankrik, the enraged Mankrik to come out of the deck as a 3/7 to go face. Still has Jandis, still has Tenwu, still has a Shadow Step. These boards are not going away anytime soon.
Like I said, Bozzzton only really has to get the Felkeine to 16, because at this point he could actually just Tenwu Shadow Step next turn.
Unforgiving struggle.
And there is a stab as well. Damage building up. Could just go for it here, right? Well, you would need 6 damage stab overall, I suppose. And there is the possibility for randomly generated healing to come out from the deck of Lunacy. So I think overall just pushing for board again with the Jandis is probably the best way to go about this turn.
Yeah, I agree. And then depending on what comes out from Jandis, he could end up just using Wicked Stab on the face, maybe?
He could hedge here, right? And go like Jandis, Tenwu the Jandis, Shadow Step the Tenwu, and then just replay the Jandis again, just to have a huge board, and have a Shadow Steps Tenwu in his hand to give himself that 16 from Alex, just locked and loaded and ready to go at some point.
I like that a lot. I was going to say, regardless of what happens, I want the 0 mana Tenwu in the hand here if Bozzzton wants to win this game quickly.
What makes something real?
As we all know, the statistically correct Shadow Step target here is now the Felsoul Jailer. That play has 100%
yeah,
Hearthstone Grandmasters.
That's true. Bozzzton sees it. I think with that Shadow Step, Felkeine knows what's up.
No, nothing. Has to be Font of Power into Raz?
Okay.
Oh!
But it does mean that the... Wait. Oh no, the Great Bow Death Rattle won't go on the Beast Death Rattle, right?
The Teacher's Pet came from the second Jandis, right? So I think the Grey Bow Death Rattle will go off first. Yeah.
I mean, it looks good to me.
Suddenly that Armor Smith has become incredibly relevant, right? Because it's only that Armor Smith that means that if Bozzzton wants to, he can just ignore all this and just carry on with the burn plan if he really needs to.
And even now, right, he could just play an 8/8, go face, and do Wicked Stab as well.
Yep, which means if there is not immediate lethal or healing for Felkeine on the following turn, he is just going to have that Alexstrasza Tenwu to follow it up for 16.
And there's maximum 17 damage with ping this turn, which is only just more than the armor Bozzzton has. Never mind, it's 30 health behind that. I think I like it, because also Felkeine can't just ignore an 8/8 either, right? So I think what's key here is to just not overcomplicate the plan.
Choose soon. And the cycle of life.
I agree. This play is very similar when you think about it, right? He's putting an 8/8 into play, and he's doing half of the 2 turns that he needs to do to win the game. The My argument would be there might be more things that mess with you playing a spell from hand than doing the Alex Tenwu business, but I don't know if that's necessarily true when you're facing down Deck of Lunacy, but that's just kind of how I'd look at it. But you know, he has plenty of things in hand to break counterspell with here anyway, so you know, who cares in the end? I'm sure that this is almost just as secure as lethal, if not more so, than doing it the other way around.
Yeah, the most important thing is like he has not just secret passage to break the counterspell, right? Because if it's not counterspell, it's like, ooh, awkward. But yeah, he could just Deck of Lunacy into Wicked Stab to win the game.
Discovery.
Does Felkeine, did he have any death rattles? I don't think so, right?
Baby, I'm a
Nope.
Felkeine doing the best he can to defend here, right? He's just got the secrets up, he's leaving. Wait, did he pick barrier?
He didn't pick barrier. That's what he was upset about. That's what he was upset about. The fact that barrier wasn't offered. He considered that exact out. And like, it took me a while as well. I got there just before the man crit came out. It was like he missed barrier, and then I saw him react to that, and I was like, why does he care about barrier? And then remembered that the man crit was in the deck.
Right.
That could potentially put a stop to that whole business. So yeah, nicely done.
Yep, again, I think Felkeine did a good job of just doing what he needed to do with a pretty miserable game, honestly. And I've not seen a mage do so little in quite a while over here in the European region, Soto. But yeah, Bozzzton, he just kept the pressure on there. And I think just basically just had the right setup, right? It was some fortunate outcomes, but the Octo, the Neophyte just delaying a bit what Felkeine could do, and then even just landing the Golem for that more card draw, which is not actually a type of Golem we see too often at all, right? Stealth draw 2 on a 5 drop.
Yes. It was just enough though in the end, right? With the Octobot discount, with the strong curve into the Kazakus. And I do want to circle back round to that last turn where we were like, okay, just do it the Wicked Stab and play the Elemental. Actually, the way that Bozzzton did it, now that we get to see the interaction with the Mankrik and the Ice Barrier, he gave himself an additional out of drawing the second Wicked Stab in that situation, right? Like, say if Felkeine plays Ice Barrier and then Mankrik is summoned and activates Ice Barrier, he can then also top deck second Wicked Stab, the way he did it. Because if he goes Wicked Stab on the first turn, like we were suggesting, he has maximum mana utilization on the following turn just going Alex, Tenwu, Alex, and he can't fit in extra damage alongside that. Whereas doing the more expensive thing first, he gave himself that out of where if they heal for 8 with the Mankrik that I can't control, I still have that out of drawing second Wicked Stab. So I think all things considered, outside of Deck of Lunacy nonsense, which maybe there's something in there that I'm not considering, I think Bozzzton actually got that spot on in the end.
And it does look like we're jumping over to Demon Hunter here for Felkeine, and you know, this might be the deck that reverse sweeps or well kicks it all out, because we've seen it happen before, but again, it's not really the most comfortable pick versus Rogue. But I guess the problem here for Felkeine is it's either that or a mirror match, which is again probably not really what you want to play. So already we're seeing a LHS kick in as always.
Yes, and yeah, I do think further testing required to really get a final verdict on this matchup, because I do think as time goes on, the rogue lists get more refined, the play gets more refined, people understand how to maximize percentages a lot better, and I think that's creeping this matchup further towards the rogue. I'm not entirely convinced it's there yet in terms of being a 50-50 or a favorable, but if you'd have asked me before we even came into Last Hero Standing, like we weren't seeing that much Demon Hunter, right? It was a deck that was almost out of the meta game entirely. If you'd have asked me about this matchup then, when we weren't seeing it played at a high level very often, I would have said it was pretty free for Demon Hunter, because you just look at like the Immolation Aura interaction, you look at how slow the damage comes in the early game most of the time for the rogue, and you just expect Demon Hunter to have enough time to get there. But now we're seeing all this disruption from the Cult Neophyte. Now we're seeing these powerful starts with like Foxy Vanessa, like you were talking about, just a ton of stats coming out in the early game that people are doing a lot more often now with Vanessa in the deck. I do think there's a lot of things just moving over slightly towards the rogue side, but I think Felkeine, I think a Demon Hunter player who has put Demon Hunter in their lineup expects to be beating rogue in Last Hero Standing.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Hey though, Bozzzton. Already has to decide what to do with this mulligan, and although I like Vanessa nice and early in the game, I do think this might just be a full throw here, and it looks like Bozzzton agrees. Yeah, it's just none of the key cards. Like, you can even, okay, well, that's a lot better, but you can even argue that, like, Mankrik is a key card in the early game, right? Just get it played, get it out nice and early, especially against Demon Hunter that struggles to deal with even the nerfed version of Enraged Mankrik.
Well, I doubt it's going to be a full throw, Raven, because you have to go over to the Americas region to generally see those. Statements that may age poorly within the next hour or so. Who knows? Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Hey, though, Mankrik, Neophyte, Kazakus, Coin. It's all looking good to me, Sol.
Coin. Yeah, love how that was on the list.
I mean, yeah.
How do you feel about a 2-1?
Feel great. Took it in.
Love it. Seems dumb, right? Because there's a hero power on the other side that can clear it up, but a lot of the time Felkeine wants to play Chaos Strike this turn. He wants to play Spectral Sight this turn. Obviously Chaos Strike deals with the 2-1, but it deals with it inefficiently compared to just taking 2 damage to face and compared to using the hero power. And obviously if Spectral Sight were to come down, then boom, you're just pushing 2 damage for free that turn, which I think is a very big deal.
Yeah, I think Felkeine's like, what? Okay. The first one was weird. But the second one is the Neophyte wasn't really going to stop anything happening to it, except maybe an I-beam, I guess, that's not Outcast, of course. But I did wonder just for a second whether Bozzzton could have actually just played the Mankrik out first there and used the coin.
You just played Tenwu on curve as a 3-2. Like, I'd honestly argue with you about which of those cards is more valuable in the mid-game, right? To have a Tenwu or have a Occult Neophyte in your hand for blocking skull purposes.
No, I'm right there with you. That's why I was thinking also, it's not like Kazakus is almost always a 5-drop in this matchup, right?
Yep.
So it's not as if Coin Kazakus does anything. It doesn't actually speed up how quickly you can get those golems down. So that's why I was even thinking of just Coin Mankrik, then 2-drop whatever, and then play the 5 cost.
Well, Bozzzton got Summon a Copy, which is the important one. He didn't really get any of the good keywords for the matchup, but he got Summon a Copy, so I think, all things considered, he will take that to the bank.
I see.
But now these turns are about to rise in power level very rapidly for Felkeine as he gets outcasted Spectral Sight into outcasted Skull of Gul'dan. Still a ton of high power level combo pieces left in the deck that this Skull can be hitting and ending the game as soon as next turn.
And also as well, just facing down a board. I mean, I didn't see... Okay, Rush, that's not too bad. But I was going to say, even just the 1-3 and Thanos on board is annoying, right? Like, the Bozzzton on Rogue is falling behind on board against OTK Demon Hunter. Like, that can't be the way to go.
So a little twist of the mouth there as Il'gynoth came into hand for full cost. But that is quickly remedied by snap-picking the skull from the far right, preserving the skull from the far left. Felkeine is now going to get to discount about half his deck from this point, almost certainly, so he should be more than comfortable when it comes to combo pieces.
Yeah, I think now already Felkeine will be working out how to actually empty his hand as opposed to anything in the immediate future, because he just does have to make room. He can't just effectively throw this acidic Swampoos on the board and not worry about too much. Bozzzton has to apply some pressure here, and honestly, looking at his hand, I don't even hate the Golem with Tenwu. Push 10 and make 2 more 5/5s? Or I guess 1 more 5/5 if you know what I mean, right?
This is where we can rewind all the way back to turn 2 and have the argument, right? Because obviously with the hand that he had, Tenwu was very valuable because Tenwuing golems is really powerful, particularly if you get Summon a Copy. If you get Divine Shield Summon a Copy or Stealth Summon a Copy, then even better. But he's already in a position where it looks like that might be too slow because he allowed his opponent to play Skull of Gul'dan on turn 6. Which, you know, I think potentially ends up being even more alarming for you. So, tough choice as to even the early game turns up to this point, really, to even get to this position.
He's going to get his own skull, though, by the looks of things.
No one crosses the uncrowned.
Which now, I believe, goes into the far left of his hand because of the way Secret Passage works. Yeah, okay. I wasn't 100% sure, but yeah, I thought that's how it worked.
Okay, so priority number 1 here for Felkeine. Get these minions off the board.
That is not the easiest thing in the world to do here. He would need to go Moarg, spell damage, immolation.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything else, but I think that's right.
The first spin of the immolation aura would only do 4 damage as well, which is fine because the Moarg's now a 3/5 and so can survive that.
Well, now he can't do it. Did Felkeine miscount his mana?
Curious looking turn.
I think he miscounted.
I also think he miscounted,
Because-
and suddenly statements that aged poorly has come into play. Why do I open my big fat mouth, Raven?
Because it's literally your job.
True. Disaster. Utter disaster. Well, at least he didn't confidently dump all of his Il'gynoth stuff on the board only to do half as much damage as he needed to do. Let's just leave it at that.
How much damage does Bozzzton have here? Because he can coin Alex next turn.
Mm-hmm.
Got Wicked Stab. He can Brain Freeze away the Moarg to not worry about at least that Moarg's doubling effect. He knows for sure there's another Moarg in hand. He could just start with Skull and see what happens. Oh wait, can he go Efficient, Skull, and then Brain... Oh no, he won't have enough. I'm trying to work out if he can do very broken
What do you want
things
to do?
here.
Oh, you want to...
I'm trying to... Yeah, I'm trying to work
3
out...
cards that are already going to cost 0 because you're...
Moarg.
Okay, alright. I'm actually going to say that Europe is not going to throw this game before every game because it makes the game funnier. Bozzzton there thinking he can discount his hand with Octobot and Brain Freeze, but obviously there is a Moarg on the other side of the board, so his Brain Freeze dealt 6 to his minion. This is just an abject disaster from both of our players. They are just trying to out-throw each other, and the winner of this game from this point will be whoever throws the least.
Yeah. One of them, I guess Felkeine just pushed the first domino over, right? And then for Bozzzton's following right along. And it looks like every turn's going to be a mess from here. Felkeine does have a huge recovery plan, though, as he can heal for a decent amount with a side beam.
Yeah, pretty huge, honestly, with the Talented Arcanist to go alongside it as well. I mean, even with the Moarg just sticking here, you even need it at that point.
I think he just wants max. I think he just went, well, that was a silly turn from Bozzzton. Maybe if I just stay alive longest, Bozzzton will throw more.
In fact, I didn't look at it because I was way too busy laughing. But he had a Moarg stick at the start of this turn. Has that ever happened in the history of Hearthstone where that hasn't been lethal, where you've had an Il'gynoth in your hand? I didn't actually look at it, but I'm not entirely sure what combo pieces he had. But I'm second-guessing everything at this point, Raven.
Wait a minute. How to... He used his mana, right? For a second, I was like, how much did he heal himself for? And how much health does Bozzzton have? And I was like, oh yeah, Il'gynoth's 4 mana.
Exactly. He'd already scolded at that point, so he had the mana to get Il'gynoth down. It's just a little surprising that you can stick a Moarg and not have lethal in that spot.
We can't even be blamed for these thoughts, Sol, because we're clearly getting baited a little bit by these plays.
Yeah.
Bozzzton's like, right, this Brain Freeze will kill this Moarg, right?
Yes. That will deal 12. Bozzzton. Yep. Good. Excellent. Yeah, Derek just confirming for us in chat that he had to skull there to get all the pieces he needed. So he didn't have the mana to play Il'gynoth as expected. As I said, I didn't actually check at the start of the turn. I'm just fully in second guess mode now.
Oh, that's a spell.
Mm-hmm.
Again, now with just the one Moag, what does Felkeine have to sort of piece together here to be able to get this done, especially with what he's got left in the deck?
With the Raging Fell Screamer discount, he can still get there, especially because he's already done just a little bit of chip damage and because he has the Warblades equipped here. He has the time he needs, importantly, as well, because of that huge burst heal on the previous turn. So I think priority number one is probably just to get that Raging Fell Screamer down, because this seems like the safest turn he will ever have available to do that.
Now it's interesting because he could just throw Glaive to kill some of this. It does mean he can't Rage and Fell Screamer though, but he also just takes a lot less damage this turn, which I can respect. And it also means that, to an extent, right, the Neophyte can't be Shadow Stepped or anything like that to buy more time. It just gets it killed. Do you think this is going to turn into a Jandis game here? And just Jandis Tenwu here?
It is looking that way.
Yeah, I can't imagine Alex and Tenwu getting there. One, because there's no reductions, and two, there's just a chance of out-healing that kind of pressure. So I think Bozzzton might have to just commit to a Jandis. At least see what happens initially, right? With the first one.
He has to account for just how many turns he has maximum to stay alive here anyway, though, which is probably fairly few. Yeah, this is what I was going to lead up to, is that I think getting an 8-8 on board in one way or the other is pretty powerful here, whether it's offensive or defensive. The defensive option is pretty good, right? Because I think Bozzzton here is accounting, as I was about to say, how many turns have I got left and what's the maximum damage output from the opponent? Because there's no Raging Fell Screamer that's come down yet, right? So you have to account for one turn for that to come down, and then all of the remaining combo pieces being used together still at that point, because you've seen all of the discounted Skull cards be used from your opponent's hand. Maximum damage output is approaching 24 at that point. So I think this is a good double whammy of just threatening with an 8-8, which is a great thing to do against Demon Hunter. They struggle against individual big minions. And recognizing the breakpoints of the damage that's left in the deck from Felkeine. I think it's a really good spot for Bozzzton. There has been some shoddy play this game, make no doubt about it. But I think that is a very strong piece of recognition from Bozzzton.
Many cards left.
And it's a big deal, right? Because if it sticks, I'm not saying you need to do it straight away, but he still has the Tenwu capability of Alex, right? Without having to spend a lot of mana for it initially.
That's right. So now, with these remaining cards, he has spell damage +1, which is then... So a Fellscream Blast will be dealing 2 per target, double to 4. So that means each one deals 12, which gives him 24 total with the cards that he currently has in hand. So now, Bozzzton just recognizing, just hang out. Just stick up here in the lofty heights of 30 health, and I have every chance of surviving this game.
Yep, Alex going to draw him Alex going to draw him an additional card here. He does have one Thief, but...
If he gets to the second Wicked Stab, he just has guaranteed lethal.
There you go. Wow, nice.
All right, fair enough. I like it too.
Okay, good end there for Bozzzton, but both players, I think you can see, if you didn't already know, you probably couldn't guess who won that game, because I think both were disappointed with the play there, with some pretty bad blunders, honestly, and I don't really have a better word to describe it, because they were kind of just like dumb mistakes. It wasn't not executing a fancy combo, was it? It was just kind of, your brains just switched off for a second and stopped.
I have many better ways to describe it, Raven.
That you can say on stream?
Catastrophe.
Okay.
Wood 10 play we saw from both of our players during that game, but I do think Bozzzton tidied it up very nicely at the end of the game. I'd love to tell you whether or not that setup at the end with him going offensive Alexstrasza was guaranteed or not, but unfortunately our deck tracker has gone a bit weird for me. Yep. Same for you.
No, mine has also taken a down.
So I don't know the contents of like Shadow Steps and all that kind of stuff left in the remainder of his deck that he can use to potentially guarantee getting that second Wicked Stab. But the 2-turn recognition of just getting himself above 24 and then pushing for the lethal on the following turn, I think is a very valid way of going about it there. And I do think, I said at the time, this game will end up being won by the player who throws the least. And I think that was quite definitively Bozzzton in the end, because I think he got his head back in the game quite well, recovered after the mistake, and picked it back up. But make no mistakes about it, that was a shocking game of Hearthstone from both of our players.
It really was. And you can see the frustration from both, right? Like I said, at the end of the game, Bozzzton won, and he still wasn't happy because obviously he won in a way he probably, or at least he had that one moment that he didn't really want to happen. But it does mean that Felkeine has only one deck left, and it is going to be his Miracle Rogue going up against basically the whole of Bozzzton's lineup. And even if Bozzzton loses this mirror, he has his own Demon Hunter and his Spell Mage still to go. So he's put himself in a fantastic spot to potentially get in that finals.
Yeah, and even if you want to say that's 3 50-50 matchups, it's not. I mean, there's slight favourables one way or the other, but just for the sake of argument, then Bozzzton's already in like an 80% plus position to win this series, just from having 3 opportunities at 50-50. So he should be looking pretty good from this spot. But as we've already seen so far this series, anything can happen from this point. But I do like a good rogue mirror, Raven, so I'm excited to get this one kicked off.
Yep, and for those of you still learning stats, that is correct. 3 50% make 80% is all I learned from that one. So yeah, it's going to be a big deal here for Bozzzton getting here, not only because if he can get to the finals, it's going to be... You know, it sounds funny. If he's, I know, but it just sounds funny. That's why I said it. Yeah. So anyway, Bozzzton going to the finals. Although of course we've had a bit of focus on Felkeine and Bunny Hopper over the last 24 hours or so, with the both of them having a much needed win against each other yesterday. Felkeine obviously getting here today, but if Bozzzton takes this is just almost a 180 recovery from the rest of the season. Right, it was pretty quiet throughout most of the season, and then boom. Great performance the other week, great performance this week already, and that may well secure him into that top 8 portion.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff from Bozzzton in the latter half of the season for sure to recover this around. Obviously, the from what we've seen on stream to get here so far, it hasn't been the most impressive run through the week, but in terms of results, for sure, he's definitely turned it around and put things back together. So
I don't know, Sal, that Mage series yesterday was very impressive.
Right, yeah. I'm saying from in terms of having to play really well to get to where he is, he doesn't seem to have had to do too much so far this week. But yeah, he's in a fantastic position. Obviously, we're having fun. We rarely get to have this deep level of criticism in the European region. We usually just get to do that from the peanut gallery while we're watching the lesser regions making catastrophic flubs on a weekly basis. So we're taking our opportunity to go in as hard as possible. But I'm sure now both Bozzzton and Felkeine will refocus, and hopefully we will see a high-level rogue mirror here.
Already, Bozzzton's got a pretty nice opening hand. Again, I'm sure someone, especially like Darrett, could go into the intricacies of this opener. But what do you like from here, Soto, for Bozzzton? Because field contact feels like, to me, a keep almost like every time. But is there an idea of keeping Shadow Step with field contact or not? Is Foxy just good enough to expect a good early turn from its effect?
I think keeping step is ambitious. I still think there's a little bit of debate about how aggressively you keep field contact as well. I know Gia has been bringing up the fact a lot of how Gabby just smashed his way through an entire Masters tour, largely with Rogue, while keeping field contact almost all the time, on coin, on play, any matchup, basically just held on to field contact quite rapidly. But if you look at stats, it's very rarely the best card in the deck or in the top 3 even in a lot of matchups. Even in the Rogue Mirror, it's a little bit better on coin for obvious reasons, as you might expect, but on the play, it's often hovering around 7th to 8th best win rate card in the mulligan in a lot of spots. So I certainly don't hate Bozzzton's decision to throw it away.
And we did get the Neophyte down nice and early as well, and now with Kazakus and Prize Plunderer with Shadow Step, he has a lot of ways to get control of this board and not really let it go. I wasn't considering Shadow Step here, just to activate everything. And would you hate it?
So he can actually then have a turn with Brain Freeze or something, right? To clear the board. Yeah.
Brain Freeze, Plies Plunder with the Shadow Step on the Neophyte.
So many options.
How many R's are in the word Plunderer, Raven?
Plunderer.
Okay.
Right, what did I say? Plunderer.
You pronounced it like Lorinda would, I think.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, you were making fun of me being slurry yesterday, so I'm just extracting that.
Too soon.
Bozzzton really deep in the tank on this one, isn't he?
Yeah.
And it's tricky because Shadow Step is an insanely strong card.
Sorry, Lorinda now just typed out the way he would pronounce the word plunderer in our Discord, and it has broken me.
I'm actually going to go for Tenwu instead of Shadow Step there.
That's interesting, right? The possibility of tempo Tenwu. We're talking about it a little bit in the last matchup against Demon Hunter, but you can see the value of it there. I know this is a play we've talked about a lot because of you suggesting it in various positions, like how much does the discount actually matter? What if you just have the card back in your hand and preserve it for a following turn? And it's exactly what Bozzzton ended up going for there.
But you know what bothers me the most? That Tenwu's card is bigger than everyone else's.
Wait, what? Is it?
It's not now, but when you play it, I'm sure that it's bigger than all the other cards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Raz used to have that problem as well, right? Like,
yeah.
Massive.
Yeah. Just check it out next time you're playing Rogue.
Fine.
Oh, Felkeine's happy with the Insta Mancrick's wife discovery there. Oh, and you can just prize plunder, right?
Yeah, huge turn. The Enraged Mancrick obviously making a huge deal of difference here. We got a glimpse of the Golem being rush and deal 3 to 2, which means against almost any board that was presented this turn, Bozzzton would have the counter swing. And you can see quite clearly by a huge factor how much of a big deal that 3-7 is. Because the board would just get torn apart against anything else.
I don't even hate trade the 5-5 into the 3-1 and then just Shadow Step it.
Yeah.
Because what else is he doing with this Shadow Step? Because even if he goes for, which is likely, to go for Secret Passage next turn, well, he will passage the Shadow Step away, right? So it's not like he can use it next turn either. I think he wants to use it now.
So many options.
The alternative is that he uses the Shadow Step with the Prize Plunderer, right? And uses that to take care of the 3-7 instead on the following turn if he needs to. But that's ideally something you would like to be doing with a field contact, which he doesn't currently have. So kind of like the idea of just using this Golem repeatedly to clear up board and then trying to refill with the Secret Passage after that. He's going about it a different way, though, leaving the extra damage up on play. Increasing his chances, I guess, if the board goes super wide of actually being able to get board clears, because he won't necessarily have to attack into... Oh, sorry, he won't have to land one of the damages on the Enraged Mancrick to be able to then rush into it.
And also gives him the option for Plunderer, right? Because now Plunderer can kill pretty much anything on the board apart from Jandis minions.
Yep, deck drawn. This is Miracle Rogue at its finest. Shadow Step was the last card played in the turn, which means Vanessa truly has Shadow Step synergy. This is not the meme like Tamsin having Shadow Step synergy. Vanessa actually has it. And with the field contact, Felkeine now has as many cards as he wants this turn.
If only Bozzzton would have Shadow Step first.
I know, what a noob, right? Jeez, get your ordering right. What's wrong with you?
Oh, that is so sick, though, isn't it?
Yep.
Like, just as many cards as Felkeine pretty much wants at that point. And also just a threatening board. But Bozzzton does have this Golem, does have a Plunderer as well, and even a Wicked Stab if needed.
Muzzle their magic.
Oh, it's a good counter swing turn.
Yeah,
Or
that's what I mean, it's strong. Yeah.
Yep.
After drawing all those cards, it's Jandis.
And yeah, even with all those cards, you can see still like the limited options that Rogue sometimes have to be able to address board states like this.
Initiating overdrive.
Now play the other Octobot, Tenwu the Goblin Orc Merchant.
Oh. my god.
Yep.
Efficient.
So what, he cheated 8 mana off the first one, and then, no, 7 mana off the first one, and then 6 mana off this one.
Yeah.
Gained 13 mana that turn. Alright, pretty good. Pretty
See?
good.
When you always talk about sort of that flow is in line with other decks and stuff, it's like, well, yeah, look!
I mean,
All the mana.
one flow literally gains you up to like 25 mana, and that was 2 Octobots that gained 13.
Oh, so stop coming at me with facts. Okay. I'm sick of it.
Well, don't bait me like this, Raven. I don't know what you expect to happen.
Just smile and nod.
Okay.
Or I guess since we're not on camera, verbally agree.
Yes. Make the acknowledgement noise. Well done.
Bozzzton is still pressuring a lot on this board, isn't he?
Yep.
He can almost certainly going to look at trading off this Neophyte with the Plunderer. Again, just to... I think Bozzzton's had enough of Shadow Step for this game.
I think he probably has, yes. Baffling to think about the fact that Felkeine still has the ability to play Shadow Step this game after the amount that he's already jammed, but yes. I do expect Bozzzton was just thinking about what it looks like to just go full face in that position, because, you know, jokes aside, I do think Bozzzton has had a good handle on, you know, burst damage combos and breakpoints so far for Rogue, and I think he's sort of understanding that he's behind in the value game right now, so just looking at what being outright aggressive means with a Wicked Stab and a Secret Passage in hand to be able to back that up.
Now, weirdly enough, Felkeine has, like, I was going to say an option to actually just start playing defensive here, as he has these 2 Wicked Stabs that he can just use. He still has a ton of value. There's still Jandis in hand.
Quiet.
Now he's going to start filling up Bozzzton's deck with spells.
Yeah, problem is, they're all pretty darn useful because it's just the good rogue spells that you play in the same rogue deck that your opponent is playing, right? So
Would love it if Felkeine played the Olgra.
yeah, it certainly feels like the one thing you're probably not supposed to do that turn with the elephant on board.
Finally solves the mystery of how she died.
She was
it was
by an elephant?
Yeah, it was an elephant all along. Or an Elec, technically.
Insufficient.
Oh, Felkeine. 1. Stop beating yourself up, mate. You're doing okay. 2. Didn't look like the best turn, did it?
I am slightly worried that he's going to give himself a concussion, but at the same time, I'm also quite worried that he's playing really, really badly, and I'm not sure which one of those is concerning me more.
Wow. It's pretty dark, Soul. But I do think Felkeine is quite unhappy, as we can see on camera there, and Bozzzton does still need the Secret Passage to go pretty well, because he is just massively outvalued in his hand here. Wait a minute. Bozzzton can make his own multiple Shadow Steps that aren't as good as Bancleave.
Yeah, seems significantly less good though, right?
I think
ideally-
Jandis, though.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're having fun with the idea of the Elec here, but, you know, even just all these, quote, good spells that are going into his deck, if they do go into his deck, are kind of just gumming up the works at this point. We've reached the point of the game where he just wants to draw Alexstrasza and Wicked Stabs, right? So ideally he would just be casting Wicked Stabs and have extra copies of that being thrown back into his deck, but at the moment that's not really the reality. There's just a lot of juice going to be thrown in there and giving him potential dead draws! Speaking of juice though, that is juice, B.
And that Elec is still on board. There goes Olgra.
But with the Octobots still up and running here,
Does Felkeine just get through this?
huge amount of discount. No, the illusion is definitely on the 1/1 here, right? So you definitely know that taunt is real and you actually have to ship 5 damage into it. But Felkeine does still have incredibly cheap Alexstrasza Wicked Stab now from this point.
He'll just fall short, right?
Yeah, this
17
turn.
if there's no taunt from the beast.
So many options.
With the prize plunderer getting through, you mean?
Yeah. Because you can like one thief,
space,
Alex prize.
17. Yeah, doesn't have the mana to dagger up, so I think he's one off. Yeah, I think you're right.
Why is Teacher's Pain every Jandis today?
I have no idea.
Give me that. Not what I
You see this constant shaking of the head here for Felkeine. Like he's just got himself into one of those disaster zones where he just cannot see a Hearthstone play right now.
Yeah, I think he's spiraling at this point, isn't he?
Yep.
Austin now has the massive taunt. Of course, Felkeine having the Alex and Wicked Stab means he has a certain amount of just raw burn damage that taunts have no impact on. But by the looks of it, at least, he might need some help from this one thief as well.
Cone of Cold is huge. That can potentially lock out 3 minions here as well as kill the ogre because he now knows that the illusion is on that ogre.
I wonder.
Choose to do something fairly similar with Combustion, I suppose.
Yeah, because I was looking at you'd probably want to kill the Jandis before you coned, right? So you can hit the Mankrik as well. But to do that would be weird, so I think Combustion just does a better job.
Ask of Cthulhu, but I don't know if you're like going to be looking at a clear board anytime soon, so it's probably better to play defensive with the ring toss instead. Yeah, Bozzzton seems to agree. It's just Teacher's Pet into Elec, just all the way around. I like this actually. This is a smart choice. Yeah, looking at the way he ended up with the turn, right? He was accounting for something with 3 health or less coming out of the Teacher's Pet there, and then Combustion on the Jandis would have just straight up killed all 3 of those minions, right? Eliminates the Jandis, splashes onto the 6/7 Ogre illusion, and then if the Beast didn't have 4 health or less, 4 health or more, sorry, it would end up killing that as well.
Looks like Felkeine's going to start with one thief after Wicked Stab here. He can do it for free. I think the Wicked Stab is always planned to go face. The only big difference, of course, is next turn it would do 6 damage.
Yeah, it also goes back into the deck here and he can go digging for it again.
Oh, does he not want to one thief first?
He's going to go for the lethal straight up. Right?
Yeah. I thought he was locking Alex Straza. I was like, whoa.
Okay.
One thief first because it's free. You lose nothing by doing this first, right?
Lifesteal deal 3 twice. Did you get it? Okay. Gonna go fishing.
I'm almost out of cards.
Oh, you got +1/+1. Can play. Okay, there's Brain Freeze. I imagine now he locks Neophyte in, even though Olga's tempting. I literally cannot guess what he's done here because I think Felkeine's just in a bit of a mess.
I completely agree. It's making it incredibly difficult to commentate as well because, you know, normally a lot of things that you say, like, you're basing it by following the same logical paths that the players are following, but in this occasion, those logical paths just don't really exist. Like, he's just having a mare.
And he also got Divine Shield +1/+1 to his minions with the Lesser Golem.
Okay.
I believe, anyway, unless my eyes have deceived me. So now what we've got 3, there's 6 from Wicked Stab to 9. Still a lot to make up there from Bozzzton.
Yeah, he can go Ring Toss for Ice Barrier still here, as long as he's able to clear the board or clear most of the board, and then he's still out of range of just Alex Straza. So it would need to be Alex Straza plus Dagger or Alex Straza plus a minion to be able to end the game from that point.
I guess so, maybe not. Yeah.
The Ring Toss is currently not corrupted, though, is the issue.
And also, Bozzzton's aware that there's an additional Wicked Stab in the deck, right? Sorry, it gets shuffled.
Yeah. Oh, I keep doing this. It's not Ice Barrier, it's Rogue Secrets every single time.
And you know what, Saul? I'm just right there with you.
For some reason, it's just the one interaction I cannot get through my head. It's freaking Rogue Secrets.
it's that all it does is show off the sheer volume of mage mirrors we've cast. Is that it is just so ingrained into our brains.
Yeah. In the end, disasters aside, Felkeine is going to get over the line here. Would not be surprised if he just takes a moment, whatever his allowed time is between queuing games, whether he takes it here just to recompose, go grab a glass of water, splash some water on his face, whatever he needs to do. So I'd rather be splashing water on my face than repeatedly slapping myself in the face, which appears to be Felkeine's method of focusing so far. But he clearly needs to do something because he's not in a good place. But from both sides there, it's still a little bit of ropiness overall, I would say, but more visibly so from Felkeine, who just... I was talking about this yesterday with Bunny Hopper, right, where this is obviously a much more heightened degree of what I was talking about, but sometimes you do just get into this state where you just don't know how to play Hearthstone anymore. Like you're just not able to see the lines, is the way I put it yesterday, where certain things that are easy for you on a good day, you suddenly have to think really hard, and then you're overthinking, then you get into a mess, and so you haven't allocated enough time to doing the simple stuff on the turn, and it all goes catastrophically wrong. And I think Felkeine is just stuck in one of those vortexes at the moment where everything is just a giant disaster.
And that's the issue. It is a snowball, isn't it? Because once you do a very silly mistake, which we've seen from both players this series, right?
Yeah.
Then you start questioning your basic Hearthstone play, which I'm pretty sure both of these players could do in their sleep at this point. Just as you said, the kind of the bread and butter of just how to play Hearthstone, right? But because you've messed up so bad and so, I guess, silly on stream in a very important match, then it affects you more. And it might be the case where Felkeine is just sat there going, is this right? Is this right? Am I missing something? Am I being stupid? And it's like, well, push a minion 2 damage to face when there's nothing else on board. You know what I mean? It's like, well, no, it's close, it's correct, but it does lead you to start questioning yourself, and that's really bad. So I do agree with you. I think that, take 60 seconds, maybe even just step away from the PC, if that's allowed in the rules, of course, and just say, like, okay, just breathe, forget about the previous games, they no longer matter because they've happened, and then just refocus in here as Bozzzton is going to be queuing his Demon Hunter into Felkeine's Rogue.
Yeah, and if we can get back into reality Hearthstone here, I do think this is a pretty good idea from Bozzzton. I talked a little bit earlier about how it was important to have how I felt Rogue could really come back into the matchup against Demon Hunter and was sort of gaining percentage the more and more we've seen it. One of the ways you can counteract that is by including Sigil of Flame in your version of Demon Hunter, right? And that really shores up that matchup. And I think in a metagame where we're seeing a ton of Rogue hanging around, not having to rely purely on 2 Immolation Auras to deal with 2 Field Contact boards, a Kazakus board, a Jandis board, and any Shadow Step and Tenwu boards that come into that as well. I think really just gives you that extra bit of clearing potential that you need to be able to get across the line. Not to mention what a nice interaction it has preemptively against Cult Neophyte, right? Where if you get the read, say, you want to cast Skull on turn 6, so on your turn 5 you just play a Sigil of Flames, and then your opponent's like, okay, I'm going to block their Skull turn with my Cult Neophyte. Well, you've already killed it by then preloading that Sigil of Flame on the previous turn.
Yeah, it's really nice. Bozzzton was the play I couldn't remember yesterday when I was talking about this build that I'd seen. I did say that I really like it because there's just nothing your opponent can really do about it. So it almost always gives some level of disruption, especially against Rogue. So let's see how it is going to kick off here. Felkeine does have Mankrik and Kazakus available to him in a timely fashion. But Bozzzton has a decent set of cards, especially now with that Philosophy, right? He can really get that Skull on the far left.
Yeah, Philosophy was a very important pickup here to not just have to waste a Moarg. But yeah, he has, his 3-mana turn and 4-mana turn, 7 mana to spend. Yeah, he can actually dump everything left of the Skull and still be able to coin it on curve if he really wanted to here.
Okay. Well, that was more or less back-to-back Skulls.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, now you drop the Philosophy. Now next turn you have Moarg I-Beam, and then the turn after that you have... actually, you still have to get the Immolation Aura out of the way, never mind. So you're probably just playing it on curve on turn 6 as opposed to coining it on turn 5.
And to be fair, this gives some level of flexibility with the Immolation Aura anyway, right? Like, he has that turn to clean up a little bit.
I would suspect, in fact, with that new information in mind, that he might just straight up use the I-Beam this turn, go like I-Beam Warblades or something like that, and then potentially save Moarg Immolation Aura for an additional turn to try and clean up a larger board, maybe try and interact with these golems that come down a little bit. I think I like that, right? You can just go I-Beam, preload the Warblades this turn, and then next turn you have Moarg +1 spell damage and Immolation Aura. If like a copy golem comes down to clean up.
And would you just straight I-beam the Kazakase?
I think so, yeah. Just hold on to the weapon charge, because it's getting caught in the AoE, the Mankrik next turn anyway, right? So you don't necessarily need to deal with it. Okay, it's going to hold on. Sure. I guess this means next turn. Actually, no, this is smart, right? Because now this turn you can coin the I-Beam on top of everything I said, and you don't need the coin for the skull. So yeah, this makes sense.
And I was going to say as well, especially depending on what golem comes out, the actual AoE might not be enough with the weapon swing, right? Just depending on how things look. So hold on to the I-Beam. Pretty much just guarantees you'll be able to kill any golem, apart from, I guess, the stealth one.
I grow impatient.
Does look pretty strong as well, because for a pre-skull hand, this is like almost none of the combo pieces, right?
Yeah.
So you know, and then you'll see skull into skull means that it's just very likely Bozzzton's going to hit multiple combo pieces here, and that's when games end quickly when you're against Demon Hunter.
Yeah, it also means he's going coin. He can go coin skull 1-drop next turn on a hand that's already fairly empty. So his ability to actually just straight up go skull into skull is actually quite high, because his hand isn't even going to be that full after the first skull.
Felkeine on the other side, though, is doing his own thing when it comes to card draw.
Yep.
It's not looking too bad. That's the only issue you can run into sometimes, right? Is whatever you're doing, it just always feels slower than Demon Hunter. Mainly because we can see the hands, of course, but even this, right?
I mean, this is pretty fast.
It is. It's just, I mean, I guess it stops skull. It's just one Immolation Aura just bats this aside like it was nothing.
Yeah, the immo already being used on the previous turn, though, is obviously a big deal. Like you were saying, we can see the hands.
Yeah.
I think the big deal here is that Bozzzton used the second weapon charge as well, which is something going back all the way before, right? Because I was thinking, use the I-Beam, preserve the weapon charge, so you then have the ability to just deal with field contact set up over multiple turns, whereas Bozzzton just very quickly used up the 2 weapon charges and has left himself in a spot where he just can't play skull this turn, right? Because, I mean, you can. But I think if you still had a weapon charge, smack the 3-2 play skull would just be the most brain-dead play imaginable, right? You just wouldn't even be thinking about it.
Now Bozzzton has to think about it.
Yes, he does.
Because of the order of Bozzzton's deck so far, a part of me just really just wants to see him just skull anyway and not care.
You just believe. You think if he plays skull this turn, he wins on 7? That's kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
I grow impatient.
Inherently possible.
The other way, I guess, would be the ultimate setup turn, which would be Immolation Aura and Sigil of Flame this turn.
I'm kind of into that, yeah. Not a very experienced Sigil of Flame player myself, but I do like what we achieve here.
Yeah, me neither, but I'm a very experienced Kurtrus player, as Sol saw earlier today when I showed him my board.
Yes. We also renamed this card. It is no longer Kurtrus Ashfallen. It is Kurt Russell Has Fallen, starring Gerard Butler.
That's been officially decided by a unanimous vote from me and Sol.
Yes.
Someone on the Hearthstone team could get back to us with the message we sent about the official name change. Appreciate it.
And also if the studios that we approached with the treatment for the movie and Gerard Butler could also get back to us as well, so we can start production.
Yeah, I left his agent a text, but it's not going back to me. Here though, Skull now is available, and I do like this setup from Bozzzton. It just, although it's not just ripping the skull, which It's just funny. This is just very, very powerful and just plays to the strength of what his deck wants to do, right? Already. Now he's only just facing down the Nehru. And even that's just a 5-2, so pretty reasonable expectations to be able to clear it this turn.
Yeah, I like it. And if you were paying attention to Felkeine's reactions, when the studies was played, I think Felkeine was wagging his finger like, no, please don't find the skull. He does not know how bad his situation is right now because the 2 skulls are already there on the left-hand side of Bozzzton's hand. He was just filling time, taking the setup turn with the Immolation Aura and the Sigil of Flame. And Jet, as you said, the way it worked out, I really, really like it. And he now even has the second Sigil of Flame that he can drop into this board, cleans up the 5-2, and also plays around the threat of the second Jandis that he has coming for that he knows has been shadow stepped by Felkeine, right?
Here, though, is how many skulls are too many skulls? That is the question. Because to me, I'm tempted to look at I-Beam here if I was Bozzzton.
I think I would take I-Beam there, yeah. I think that second skull gets trapped mid-hand quite quickly. It could still be useful to draw 3 cards later on. But overall, I kind of agree. I think you're going to draw a card next turn, right? And as long as that card isn't easily dumpable, which it quite often isn't, could be a combo piece, could be Il'gynoth, could be Chaos Strike, could be a number of things. Philosophy even doesn't play nicely because all of the cards I'm mentioning either must be held in hand or put another card to the right of the skull as soon as you cast them. As soon as that top deck isn't perfect, you're never going to get to play that skull outcasted. So yeah, I respect the I-Beam there.
And just a reminder, you guys can't see it on screen, but there is that second Sigil of Flame active right now on Bozzzton's side, which means whatever Felkeine leaves on his side of the board is going to be taking 3 damage next turn.
Nice.
The ultimate play around.
That's the juice.
It's actually insane. Is that arguably the 2 best different minions?
I think so, yeah. Right, like the Gurabashi Berserker is just an Earth Elemental with upside here, right? Because an Earth Elemental... No, the Earth Elemental would be a 7/6. The Gurabashi is a 5/6 with further potential upside. And then obviously...
5, right?
Oh, sorry, 3 damage. Yeah, I keep thinking it's 2 damage. Anyway, I guess with the Blood Mage in play, it's 4 damage right now, but I'm sure that's getting dealt with.
We're both wrong.
Yeah, but the Burning Blade Acolyte is for sure just the nuttiest minion that you could get here.
That's the thing, right? The Gurabashi is a 5/5, but it's not because it can gain attack. Therefore, it's a 5/5, effectively with taunt, or at least a high priority sign over its head.
Raven, the Gubarashi, okay? Put some respect on its name.
Apologies.
Well, that's a 1-mana Il'gynoth.
Yeah. Is he dead?
Not right now. But next turn, he can spend, 8 mana on Moargs and Arcanists. So that I-Beam does 5, then it does 10, then it does 20. Aldraki Warblade's pushing 22, 24. Yeah, it's exact lethal next turn because the I-Beam blasts through the Taunt minion and then the weapon can swing face. I believe he has exact Xyz next turn.
Demons? Demons. Time grows short.
Oh, you can actually play a whole extra Moarg, right? So it goes to 10, 20, and then 40 even. So he just has a million next turn.
He plays 3 Moargs, 1 Taunted Arcanist, right?
Yep. Yeah, so he just has a million next turn even. As long as the I-Beam stays unoutcasted. Which he actually can't do, right? Because it does then get outcasted. Yeah, that's the problem. Because he has to play... If he plays all the Moargs and the Il'gynoth, then the I-Beam gets outcasted. No, because that's a card he draws this turn. So yeah, he's fine. He has a million.
I'm lost. Saul changed his mind about play 500 times then, and I lost track. I was just looking at this nice push of Illusion here from Felkeine. Because it does add an additional taunt to the... Wait, is he not going to play it? Oh, okay, sorry. He has gone double Neophyte, which makes sense.
Yeah, the Guardian Org Merchant is super clutch here, right? Because he's applying Divine Shield to his taunt, which means if the lethal involves some combination of I-beaming the taunt and hitting face, he's playing around that in multiple ways, because the I-Beam will do 0 damage to a Divine Shield, and also it's making the taunt harder to plow through if a weapon also needs to hit face to achieve lethal.
And everyone!
Can he still do this with Neophyte?
So,
really?
I'll be honest, you're my Demon Hunter lethal calculator, so if you don't know, I definitely don't know.
I'm extremely surprised he can do this with with Neophyte still in play, if he thinks he can.
Well, Bozzzton's shaking his head, and normally if you can do it, it's done by now, is my experience.
Yeah, so I think if, obviously, I-Beam when Outcast costs 1, right? So I think he's trying to push it back into Outcast. He just can't. He can't get it over there, so I don't really see what he was hoping to achieve this turn.
I bet you can do this!
Now with the spell damage coming down, I believe that is only 20, and he now does not have enough to go through with the Warblades, because the Warblades deal 0 damage because it's attacking a Divine Shield. So the play from Felkeine has actually ended up being very relevant. As I said, putting the Divine Shield... Okay, no, sir. That we will not allow. No one gets to gloat this series. No one.
Oh my.
Okay? Strictly off limits. There is 0 gloating allowed in this.
I like it. Who cares about the last game? That already happened. Gloat over this game. Yeah, that was a strange one. I think Bozzzton just didn't really consider the implications of exactly what the turn would require, right? And the turn required a weapon swing to face. So yeah, something went wrong there. And it's a bit of a shame there for Bozzzton, because I think one thing we can say for sure is his build of Demon Hunter looked very impressive, right? Against especially this rogue with those Sigil of Flames doing it a lot of work.
Yeah, but you know, if we're going to focus on some of the minor flashes of light throughout this series so far, I do think Felkeine woke up a little bit there at the end and actually played some good Hearthstone and said, all right, these Divine Shields coming down are a big deal. And you saw why it was a big deal at the end, right? Because Bozzzton thought he had lethal, and he did if there weren't Divine Shields involved, because he would be dealing 4 more damage potentially with the Eldraki Warblades on top of all of that as well. However, you can't I-Beam the Divine Shield, because that does 0 damage because you're hitting a Divine Shield, and you can't attack the Divine Shield because that does 0 damage from your weapon swing anyway. So that reduces your total damage output by putting the Divine Shield on the taunt. So it was a very nicely played turn at the end by Felkeine in terms of being as defensive as he possibly can. But overall, this series has just been the story of who throws least in every game. It's been an extremely poorly played series overall throughout, and there is no hiding that.
It's definitely been a bit of a mess, but it does mean now Bozzzton has to fall back on his Spell Mage. And if there's ever a clean, no-nonsense deck, Sottle, it is Spell Mage. So we'll see how that pays off for him there. Of course, does have that Deck of Lunacy, is only running the single Ring Toss in his list, which is one of the more common cuts, especially if you want to keep a Shooting Star. It's normally one or the other, right? 0 Shooting Star or 1 Ring Toss to make room for that Deck of Lunacy, at least at the moment.
Yes, but we are now down to, perhaps thankfully for all involved, I think both of these players will want to go and hide under a blanket for the next several hours after this series ends. But we are finally at the end. It's going to be Rogue versus Mage. It's going to be all the way back to where we started, as Raven was pointing out some of the minor differences this time around. But everything I said at the start of the series about how this really feels like the emblematic matchup of the metagame so far does come back into play. But this time, Bozzzton is on the Mage, and his hand is looking an awful lot juicier than Felkeine's did on the other side.
Yeah, he actually has stuff to do, which is a huge improvement compared to the game we saw a little bit earlier on. But the big question once again, is it going to be Incanters into Lunacy here? Or is Bozzzton going to go a different route? Because the minions he does have aren't that bad, right, to get him to the Deck of Lunacy without playing him Flow. Obviously, he can't play this turn.
Yeah, and so I've been having to think about this over the last couple of days and sort of trying to get to the bottom of why players have been casting Flow and then Lunacy with both of them in hand. And honestly, I think it's just kind of spend your mana logic, where looking back at some of the turns where it's happened, there's been nothing else to spend 2 mana on that turn, right? So they've, instead of just floating 2 mana, they've just played the Incanter's Flow, discounted a couple of cards in their deck, and then given themselves the opportunity to just still continue to play Burn if their hand developed in such a way that made sense. and then just gone with the Lunacy when that hasn't happened later on. So I think that's generally what we've been seeing, and you see that same kind of thing again there from Bozzzton, right? It's just there's this time I think he will likely commit because he's got the second Lunacy, second flow and card draw in his hand to follow this up. Yeah, this tends to make sense.
Felkeine, unhappy to see that, but at least now he has a very clear idea of how the game's going to progress, right? He knows that he has no idea of how the game's going to progress, so he can actually just pile on a ton of pressure and hope for the best. He doesn't really have to overly worry about being burnt out this game.
This is my deck of Lunacy, Raven. Insta draw 4 off the top. That's what I'm used to seeing. This is a real deck of Lunacy game. There's only one play, right? Surely it's discount everything, draw 4 cards, win the game. I fail to see anything else.
I was going to say a Pexis Blast to the face. That's no move.
I mean, that too. I respect the philosophy behind that play, at least.
Thank you. Yeah. Casual 1-mana Siphon. Is that Invigorating Sermon?
It is indeed.
See? Raven with the old card names.
Yeah.
Nice Ice Barrier as well there for Bozzzton, right? Just the weakness of this opening is you will get beaten up in the early game if they play stuff. So having that Ice Barrier just to maybe buy him just that extra bit of time he needs.
That initiation is a very good looking swing a couple of turns from now. Probably looking at some combination of Siphon Soul this turn. I don't think the initiation can really do work here. But say you go a Pexist Siphon this turn, just leave like the 5/5 Divine Shield maybe, then you can ping and initiation on the following turn to steal the 5/5 Divine Shield.
Oh, okay. I was actually going to just Siphon the Divine Shield and leave the Mancrit. Order! Yeah, I think, this is what I was looking at. Moon touched, okay.
Got the attack though. Probably a little better off with the... oh no, it's not.
It's corrupted.
Feral Rage there for a second. Yeah. I was confusing it with Feral Rage, my bad.
No, you take 4 kind of free damage to the face. Well, maybe the armor would have come into play.
Care to make a wager, friend?
Always going to consider Cram Session. Brain Freeze with Snap Freeze does clean up this board without having to use a Prize Plunderer.
Muzzle their magic.
Gets to push 5 as well, I like it. Or he could even just Snap Freeze and hold the Brain Freeze and just strand the Allura on the board. Oh, Felkeine, what's wrong now?
So
Now you're just having a moan!
Cheer up! I'm joking, Felkeine. Don't be angry with me. Oh, I'm surprised at that. I thought there was going to be something on this Allura this turn.
Yeah, kind of agree. But I think, honestly, Felkeine's just looking at this hand and saying it's not going anywhere. I need field contact, and therefore is just preserving all field contact juice in hand to be able to get there.
Yeah, I guess. I just think I would have then just snap freeze it and just let it stay there, because now the board feels way more clearable if Mancrit can be brought down to 3 health, right?
True. Not the prettiest looking hand from Bozzzton. It's still okay though. Like even Wormweaver Initiation as like a baseline play that I'm seeing seems fine.
Fel Guardian's Invigorating Sermon, pretty sick.
No, not really.
time runs out on me.
It's a lot less board presence than the Wormweaver play, right? It's 3 2/3 and +1/+1, but you just get a whole like a Wormweaver Initiation. You get the Wormweaver, the 2 mana worms, and the thing that you shoot the initiation.
That's true.
It's a lot more board presence.
Mancrit does get to stay pretty big on board though, with that 5/6.
Yep, big deal. All right, it's a good draw. Through Jandis, all things are possible.
Are you hosting the sermon now?
Yes.
Felkeine's letting himself get worked up even more than he should be here, because this doesn't look that bad, does it?
I wonder.
I don't think so. No, I don't think this reaction is about what's happening right now. Right
Sure.
Now, right? I think it's just built over the course of the series.
I guess that's my point, though, right? Like,
yes,
he needs to wipe away what's already happened. Who cares? It's happened, right? Focus on the here and now, because this is a winnable game of Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
So many options. Choose two.
Trading does make sense here. His hand pretty much starts to just clear things up. And again, holding on to a Plunderer and Brain Freeze here just to try and wait for that field contact. But again, I think maybe I'm too optimistic. People have told me this before, but I think I would have used just something to kill off an additional minion there, because this board is pretty scary.
What to do?
This turn has just made me throw up in my mouth a little bit, Raven.
Get a drink.
You can go Shooting Star, Mask. Shooting Star.
Okay, Sean.
Mask. He can play Mask if he really wants to even clear up the majority of the rest of the board, and then still has the mana to go Force of Nature, Invigorating Sermon to just play out 3/2/2s and then buff the entire board. Insane.
Seems reasonable to me.
If he's not doing that, then Arcane Intellect should have been played first this turn, right?
No, well, I think he can just do this and Mask. What about that?
Yeah, this is my play. Yeah. This is what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
The Mask was going to be played this turn. This is fine. Yep.
Ooh. One alive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, game looking slightly less winnable, and by slightly I mean a lot now for Felkeine.
Yeah, it's going to take care of the biggest minion, then I imagine go fishing here with the Secret Passage. I guess he can just go full clear up with the Prize Plunderers, right? And just use the Secret Passage as the refill next turn instead. Okay, yeah, sure. I'm on board with this.
I don't know what he was going to passage into to do this, right? So you may as well get it done.
True.
But Arcane Intellect in Bozzdton's hand is pretty clutch here, because regardless of how good this next draw of this Feral Spirit was, he can just draw more, and there's a Libram of Hope.
Yeah, one more of those guaranteed in the deck. He had his Natural Mask in hand. He has now drawn one of the other 7 mana cards, but he's unlikely to need much more gas than this from this point forward, because it's hard to imagine how Felkeine is going to be able to address this board state.
Yep, a smooth 28 health as well for Bozzdton means that even with fortunate outcomes such as Olgra, I think it's just too much to go, and there's not a chance that he's going to be able to raise this amount of damage, since he's just going to be dead next turn. One Thief? Get him anything relevant?
There's no Frost Nova, so we would have to get like Font of Power into Discover exactly Varden as the one-off Discover.
Give me that.
I don't think Prize Plunderer does enough here. Maybe Prize Plunderer plus second One Thief into Flurry is now an out as well.
Not what I want.
Look at all this. That's a lot of
Yeah, I
bears.
think it is. Yeah. You just go Brain Freeze. He's actually not dead straight up, even without the additional One Thief spell. Yeah, okay.
That's 2
Hanging in there.
trades.
Oh, filthy. So backfire off the top, Raven. Disgusting.
Why isn't Bozzdton being charged for any of these cards? They're all 0. Oh.
Not really that good, is it? We're used to it being the nuts when it gets generated.
I mean,
but not particularly powerful here.
Is it still just like Libram Bulwark anyway?
Possibly, yeah.
He can play the Blood Sail too.
Probably hexing the Enraged Mancrick as well along the way.
You'd hex it last, right?
I think I'd poke it for 1 if you're going to play Bull.
Oh, okay, sure. The Bulwark can use a Jura. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think full value trade here. Go for another Libram, heal back up to full. And I think that might be the play that makes Felkeine concede here.
You said that last turn, Raven.
Wait, what? Did I?
Quit moving the goalpost. Well, you didn't, no. But you said,
Subtle just lied.
you said something very similar. But,
What?
yeah, fair enough.
Okay. Gonna end it with the Hex instead, use the ping, and hold on to the Bulwark of Azanoth.
It's quiet.
Finally, there's the field contact that Felkeine has spent this whole game waiting for, it seems. Alright, devolving missiles, sure.
It's the sound of Sol trying to convince himself there's a chance.
Yep.
Oh,
That's
did
a
that
Tom.
just get worse?
Yeah, I think the board just got scarier.
Yeah.
Probably.
The big old badonkatonk on the other side of the board, and that is a problem. That just gets you a Hex. It's something that Bozzdton's had to consider the whole time around. I was thinking about whether that's ever relevant. When we were talking about Bulwark on the previous turn, right? Like whether Vanessa Van Cleef, if you're playing Bulwark, whether that's
sure.
you have to worry about, but probably not in that scenario.
Yeah, I think the fact that even Mage can just ping it off over multiple turns if needed, or even just removing that one durability would have been enough. But it does mean Felkeine did concede to that, and Bozzdton does win the series. And what a weird series, Sottle. It was very, very messy with some good moments sprinkled in.
Yeah, I'm struggling to remember too many of the good moments, it has to be said. But yeah, they were there and thereabouts. But both players really did spiral into disaster at various points, and it honestly did feel like at times like they were trying to outdo each other on who could throw the series the hardest. Because there was, speculated lethals that didn't exist. There was just straight up miscounting of mana. There was forgetting a Moog was on board and shooting your own Octobot for too much damage and not proccing the Frenzy. Felkeine just missing so many opportunities in the Rogue Mirror to just be much more aggressive and end the game as well. Like. Both of these players are going to want to visit from our good friend Cher, Raven, so they can both turn back time and just play this series out again. Because, again, unlike... I know they don't need me piling on the misery. Like, they know they both play badly. And, outside of everything else, obviously Bozzdton gets to live another day and Felkeine is out. Felkeine's fighting against relegation still. So it's a much bigger problem for him. But, outside of everything else, like, those players will just feel embarrassed. Like, we've all been there, right? Like, I've played a streamed game in a tournament where I just missed Grom in a raged lethal with my opponent at 12, right? There's no excuse for that when you're a good player, and it's just embarrassing. It just happens. You just don't really want to show your face for some time afterwards, and I think that's generally what effect that has on people's psyche, but they just have to readjust, and Bozzdton in particular now has to readjust because he's not done for the day. He now has to play a final in an hour or so's time after this next series.
And I think that's the most important point. Because he isn't playing second today on stream, it means he has